It's over.
I saw the angel.
Fear is a 2023 horror movie. Directed by Deon Taylor, it stars Joseph Sikora, Ruby Modine, and Tip T.I. Harris. A weekend holiday gets sinister when a group of friends must face their fears one by one.
You guys have no idea what a great weekend we have ahead of us.
All right, here we go. I really hope this is the worst movie I see this year because this was rough. So I just got back from checking out Fear at a theater near me. And I should have taken it as a sign when I walked in and the theater was completely empty. But I know that this is a small indie movie and a lot of small indie movies just don't get a huge turnout. And it's been a pretty great week for me at the theaters because I started off the week on Sunday going to see Infinity Pool, which I absolutely love. It's probably my top movie of the year at this point. And I did do a review if you want to check that out. Then I went and saw Knock at the Cabin, which I thoroughly enjoyed as well. One of my more recent favorite M. Night movies. And I did do a review of that as well if you want to check that one out. And then today, Wednesday, I went and saw Fear. And talk about a letdown, because those first two movies were fantastic. Movies I definitely recommend. And I didn't have any expectations really for going into this. I didn't even see the trailer, I don't think. I just knew it's an indie horror movie and it's in theaters. And that's pretty much all I need to go check out a movie. So it starts off and right away I'm like, okay, this is going to be one of those movies. Because none of this cast looks like real humans and definitely don't look like a group of friends. I have never seen an entire group of friends look like this. They're all super thin. They all look like they've been models or wannabe actors on some level. They're diverse, like it's a perfectly mixed kind of thing with different nationalities. And just none of it looks like a real group of friends. But I'm like, all right, I'm going to try to forget about that and just take it for what it is. And then they start talking. And I was like, oh God, because the dialogue is so cringy. None of them talk like friends talk. Beyond that, it just feels like each one of them is just giving lines. It's not so much the performance is given, but just the way they're written. It's just not how people talk to each other. There was nothing natural feeling at all about it. And I felt zero chemistry with any of this cast. The main character, Joseph Sikora, gives this really awkward, strange performance. He's kind of unlikable, even though you could tell you're supposed to like him. There's just something really weird about just everything about the way he delivers his dialogue and just his performance in general. He just felt weird. And there was a lot of situations where, like early on, where he's supposed to propose to this girl he's in love with. And just all the way that goes down, then the conversations he has with his friends. I'm like, that's not how people in the real world talk. That's not how they interact. That's not a real situation. You don't do this. It doesn't go that way. And it just was so hard, even from the very beginning, to get into this movie. And it sets up these characters for far too long, in my opinion, without giving you any real cool hooks into the story and plot. I did really appreciate where the location is, because it's actually up the hill from where I live. It's called Strawberry, and it's up towards Tahoe, and it's the Strawberry Lodge, a real place, a beautiful location. And I didn't hate all the cast. Ilonzeh, I thought, gave a really solid performance, especially as the story progresses towards the end when things get very emotional and intense. I thought she did a really good job at that point. As well as Ruby Modine, who I've seen before, and she did a great job here again too. It's just this group and the way they're put together and the dialogue. I don't really have an issue with the actors, but it just felt like too many pretty actors stuck in a group that you're supposed to believe are friends, and that just doesn't work for me. And then Tip, the rapper, T.I., he wasn't horrible, but he was very typecast. He's really predictable. He's overly like masculine, aggressive. And T.I. might actually in real life be that way. I doubt it, but maybe he is. But that was my issue. It was more of just this typecast kind of thing that was so predictable. Everything from the way he talked, walked, interacted with people. I'm like, come on, really? Like, you got to give us this? But the story itself just doesn't feel original. It's all very predictable. It's one cliche after another. The lighting, it feels overly contrasted and gritty to make it feel dark and creepy and scary. And there were some shots and some scenes that weren't the worst as far as the way they looked, but just in general, so much of this felt trope heavy and just boring. Like, I really, really struggled to keep my eyes open for so much of this movie. I'm sitting there just like battling, falling asleep. And this is not supposed to be a slow burn. This is not supposed to be a dialogue heavy movie. It's not. There's plenty of action and moving parts going on, but just the story, nothing pulls you in. The characters don't pull you in. Nothing's interesting. It just felt so boring. And then don't get me started on the CGI. Oh God, it was abysmal. There's some really cringy CGI stuff that almost felt like PS1 graphics. I was like, what the fuck is this? There were a few practical effects and this and that were okay, but for the most part, every time there's a kill or gore or blood or anything like that, they pretty much cut away. And when they do show it, it's just this awful CGI that feels just slapped together, no thought or care put into it. And I get that this was shot right in the middle of the pandemic. It was shot in the summer of 2020. So I get all of that, and I get that this was really on top of mind, and you know, everybody was consumed with that. Okay, I get that, but just the way they throw the pandemic in here and the whole thing that's supposed to be about you battling your fears and this and that, it was handled really clumsy, clunky, disjointed. It just, you're expecting them to each kind of face their fear in a different way, and that's not what happens. It's confusing, and it just, oh God, the way they set up these things, and then when they use them, how they use them, like the things that they're afraid of, it's just stupid and doesn't really make sense. It's just kind of like an afterthought. Even the music in this feels absolutely cliche and just like something you would have seen in the early 2000s. I feel like this movie was made by, and I don't even know anything about the team that made this movie, but it feels very much like people that are kind of has-beens, that are not at all up to date on what is being done in the genre of horror. Everything just felt early 2000s, but not even in a fun way, not even in a way that I can appreciate with early 2000s, but instead the made-for-TV stuff that's not so bad it's good, it's just bad and boring. Which, if you've watched very many of my reviews, you know is what I consider to be the worst possible crime you can commit in a movie, and that's being boring. And I felt like they were ripping off scenes from so many different horror movies I have seen. Unless you're super young in horror, you're gonna see these scenes and be like, oh, that's from that movie, and that movie did this way better. Oh, that's from that movie, and this movie didn't do it right either. It's just cringy, so much cringe in this movie. So that's gonna sum it up. I just really did not enjoy this movie, did not have a good time. And I know that anytime someone makes a movie, that's something to be commended. And also the fact that this tiny little movie made it into a theater, that's also pretty cool. But I would not recommend it. I definitely wouldn't recommend going anywhere near a theater and wasting your money on it. If you want to see it, wait for it to be streaming somewhere, because it'll probably be on Tubi in a couple weeks. Like, this is not a good movie, and it's not going to stay in theaters very long at all. That's it for me today. Thank you so much for watching this. If you enjoyed this, please hit that subscribe button and ding that little bell. It's the best way to keep up with this channel and every video that I put out. I also want to give a huge, massive, enormous thank you to the Ghost Pirate Army, to you guys over on Patreon, because you guys mean so much to me. And if you want to find out how you can help produce this channel and become a part of the army, there's a link down in the description. And like always, thank you so much for watching. Please crush that like button, and remember guys, horror can be fun. If you guys enjoyed this, click right here to see my review of Knock at the Cabin. And I'll see you guys next time.